This video analyzes the game played between Zeisler, who played with the white pieces, and Waldhofen, who played with the black pieces. The code of the opening used was C63. This opening is called the Ruy Lopez Schliemann Gambit. Result: black won the game. What is the first move of the white player? White, pawn moves to e4. Always deploy, says Franklin K. Young, so that the right oblique may be readily established in case the objective plane remains open or becomes permanently located on the center or on the king's wing, or that the crochet aligned may readily be established if the objective plane becomes permanently located otherwise than at the extremity of the strategic front. If this is somewhat obscure, and I see no reason to believe otherwise, the conclusion it reaches is stated in limpid prose by the same writer: the best initial move for white is 1.e4. What do you think it was the next move of the black player? Black, pawn moves to e5. Black's best chance to equalize is to get a fair share of the most important squares, those in the center. With one black e5 he stakes out his claim, meanwhile freeing two of his pieces. What do you think it was the next move of the white player? White, knight moves to f3. You may play this confidently, secure in the knowledge that no master alive can make a better move. 1. The knight develops in one move to its most suitable square in the opening. 2. It exerts pressure on two of the four squares in the vital central area. 3. It comes in toward the center so that it enjoys maximum mobility. 4. It helps clear the king's side, enabling early castling of the king on that side. 5. It is posted ideally for the defense of the king after he castles. 6. It comes into play with a gain of time and attack on a pawn. In short, it's a very good move. What do you think it was the next move of the black player? Black, knight moves to c6. A commendable reply. Black develops a piece, protecting his pawn at the same time. What do you think it was the next move of the white player? White, bishop moves to b5. Probably the strongest move on the board. The bishop puts a restraining hand on the pawn's defender. There is no immediate threat of winning the pawn, as after 4. Bishop takes at c6. Pawn from file d takes at c6. 5. Knight takes at e5, the reply 5. Black queen moves to d4, regains the pawn. But there is pressure on the knight, and this pressure becomes intensified when black sooner or later advances his d-pawn, since the knight is then pinned. What do you think it was the next move of the black player? Black, pawn moves to f5. This was an inaccuracy. A better move would have been pawn moves to a6, a bold attempt to seize the initiative. The idea is to lure white into surrendering the center by taking the f-pawn. What do you think it was the next move of the white player? White, pawn moves to d4, this was an inaccuracy. A better move would have been pawn moves to d3, an aggressive player would like white's counter-attack on the e-pawn. Another dynamic line is 4. Knight moves to c3, aiming for piece play, while a conservative player might be content with 4.d3, supporting the e-pawn so that in the event of an exchange on e4 he would retain a pawn in the center. What do you think it was the next move of the black player? Black, pawn from file f takes at e4. Black's capture is intended mainly to evict the knight from its strong post. What do you think it was the next move of the white player? White, knight takes at e5, this was an inaccuracy. A better move would have been bishop takes at c6, apparently a strong move. White gets his pawn back and prevents 5 black d6 or 5 black d5. After either of these moves, the continuation 6. Knight takes at c6, pawn from file b takes at c6 7. Bishop takes at c6, check. Wins the exchange. White also has a powerful threat in 6. Bishop takes at c6, pawn from file d takes at c6 7. Queen moves to h5, check. King moves to e7 8. Queen moves to f7, check. King moves to d6 9. Knight moves to c4, checkmate. This is all very tempting, since the possibility of mating so early in the game is attractive to the young player, but such ambition should be suppressed. Premature mating attacks are usually repulsed with loss of time or material to the aggressor. A safer continuation is 5. Bishop takes at c6, pawn from file d takes at c6 6. Knight takes at e5. What do you think it was the next move of the black player? Black, knight takes at e5. Black removes the best defender of white's kingside position and puts an end to any combinative notions white might have entertained. What do you think it was the next move of the white player? White, pawn from file d takes at e5. White has nothing to show for the over-energetic move 4.d4. The simple and natural development of the b1 knight by 4. Knight moves to c3 would have been preferable. What do you think it was the next move of the black player? Black, pawn moves to c6. A pawn move when pieces should be brought into play? Yes, if the move is justified by the particular position. Black has 4 good arguments toward the pawn push. 1. He must drive off the bishop before he can advance his d-pawn, otherwise the king is in check. 2. The time lost in moving the pawn is compensated for by the fact that the bishop must also lose a move in retreating. 3. He opens a tine diagonal for his queen. 4. The attack on the bishop will win a pawn, and a pawn is worth a little trouble, according to Steinitz. What do you think it was the next move of the white player? White, bishop moves to c4. Ordinarily, this is an excellent place for the bishop, but c2 is more consistent with the requirements of the position. White has lost the services of his king's knight, and the bishop might help the defense of the king's side. What do you think it was the next move of the black player? Black, queen moves to a5 check, double attack on king and c5 pawn. What do you think it was the next move of the white player? White, knight moves to c3. The best way to get out of check. White places the b1 knight where it belongs in the opening. What do you think it was the next move of the black player? Black, queen takes at e5. Black has won a pawn, which is a good start toward winning the game. His aim now is to get an attack rolling in the direction of white's denuded king side. What do you think it was the next move of the white player? White, castles on the king's side. This was an inaccuracy. A better move would have been bishop takes at g8, plausible and bad. It was more discreet to conceal his intentions, develop the queenside pieces, and castle later, perhaps on the queen's side. What do you think it was the next move of the black player? Black, pawn moves to d5. Of course. Black seizes the center, chases off the enemy bishop, and enables his own c8 bishop to make an appearance. All this in one move. What do you think it was the next move of the white player? White, bishop moves to b3. Here too the defensive move 10. Bishop moves to e2, placing the bishop where he overlooks two diagonals, is preferable. What do you think it was the next move of the black player? Black, knight moves to f6, organizing a kingside attack by a simple process, developing his pieces. What do you think it was the next move of the white player? White, bishop moves to e3. This was a mistake. A better move would have been knight moves to e2, partly to prevent black from playing 11. Black bishop moves to c5, partly to dislodge the centralized queen by 12. Bishop moves to d4 or 12. Queen moves to d4. What do you think it was the next move of the black player? Black, bishop moves to d6. This fine move has more significance than the mere development of a piece combined with a mating threat. The ulterior object is to create a permanent irremediable weakness in white's kingside position by forcing one of the defending pawns to make a move. What do you think it was the next move of the white player? White, pawn moves to g3, the only possible defense. If instead 12.f4, then 12 black pawn from file e takes at f3 13. Queen takes at f3, queen takes at h2, check. 14 king moves to f2, bishop moves to g4 and black wins. After the text move, black starts an attack, but using his pieces rather than trying to break into the position by the pawn assault. 12 black h5 followed by black h4. What do you think it was the next move of the black player? Black, bishop moves to g4. Black bases his attack on the theme of penetration. White has weakened the f3 and h3 squares by 12.g3, as these squares are no longer guarded by the g-pawn. These squares are now holes, as Steinitz first named them. Enemy pieces that settle themselves on these squares stand firm, as no pawns can ever drive them away. The bishop attacks the queen, with the object of insinuating itself into f3 without loss of time. What do you think it was the next move of the white player? White, queen moves to d2, this was a mistake. A better move would have been pawn moves to f3, as good as there is. If white interposes the knight at e2 instead, then 13 black queen moves to h5, attacking the knight once more, forces 14. Rook moves to e1, whereupon 14 black queen moves to h3, plants a piece in one hole. Black's following move is 15 black bishop moves to f3, occupying the other hole, and the stage is set for mate at g2. What do you think it was the next move of the black player? Black, bishop moves to f3, the second step in the process of penetration. What do you think it was the next move of the white player? White, bishop moves to f4, this was a blunder. A better move would have been knight takes at d5, hoping for a line such as 14 black queen moves to e7 15. Bishop takes at d6, queen takes at d6 16. Queen moves to f4, when an exchange or two might ease his difficulties. After white's 14th move, black has a forced mate in a few moves. What do you think it was the next move of the black player? Black, queen moves to f5 deserts the bishop, but black is interested only in getting the queen to h3, with a death grip on the light squares. What do you think it was the next move of the white player? White, knight moves to d1, the only possible chance to defend. The knight is to be brought to e3 to guard the g2 square, where mate impends. What do you think it was the next move of the black player? Black, queen moves to h3, threatening instant mate. What do you think it was the next move of the white player? White, knight moves to e3, defending the critical square. What do you think it was the next move of the black player? Black, knight moves to g4, the new threat is mate at h2. Notice the clever use of the weakened light squares on the king side as the black pieces infiltrate the enemy position. What do you think it was the next move of the white player? White, rook from file f moves to e1, room for the king. What do you think it was the next move of the black player? Black, queen takes at h2 check, and mate comes next move.